Thank you, sweet pea. So I want to just say, as Mama Bear to many people in this room, and as a mother of three now adult children, is there is something to be said about. So my youngest son, for part of his young life, played professional hockey. So he, many of you know, left home early to go and play in the WHL. And I remember lots of times when I would go to his games, I was that mom, the cowbell and the thing that makes a lot of noise. And I was the one giving the birdie to the ref when I felt like he had mistreated my son or anyone else's son, even if it was on the other team. My mom used to say I should show up at games with stripes on, that if I thought I could do it better, I should probably be the referee. And I had the jersey with my kid's name on the back and all of those pieces. And my son said to me once, he goes, "Sometimes I feel like I play hockey just so that you have something to be proud of." And I was like, I don't think that's why you play hockey. And it sounds like you think being proud is a bad thing. And the reality is I am proud of you. And it feels really empowering and inspiring for me to watch you do what you do and do it so freaking well. And so I just want to say to all of you as Mama Bear, to our speakers today, to most of you in this room who have at some point been in the classroom, I'm really proud of each of you. And if I could have a little jersey with all of your names on the back, that's what it would be. And so as I sat there and listened to you share, and I mean, I know many of your stories, and I've watched you in that evolution and that thing that we call personal development, and have been very blessed and grateful to be part of it. And certainly one that I am most proud of today would be Rodolfo. Not because he's any more special than anyone else in this room. It's because Rodolfo has clearly made such a difference in my life, in that, somebody said to me once, when you want to do something really awesome and amazing, enroll people in your life that are smarter than you and better than you. And smarter than you and better at you at the things that you don't want to be smart at and you don't want to be better at. So many pieces of how running this business has been for me for 19 years are not the parts that I love. So parts like Instagram. Facebook? I like Facebook, as most of you know. Keeping up with systems, computer systems and programs, it takes a lot to make things go and work seamlessly. And not only has Rodolfo stepped up in that way, he's also been so willing just to step in and shine a light on many, many things that work, including wanting to showcase some of our most awesome, amazing grads. So thank you for that, Rodolfo. So I want to share somebody else's story for a moment. And again, Rodo said, try to wrap it all up, and especially for those of you that don't know what integrity does and who we are, and especially people in your life if they've introduced you, and when you say, well, tell me what it's about, as shared, sorry, can't tell you what it's about. There's a very specific reason why we do that, and I want to share that. And the story I want to share with you is one of the other big blessings doing this work is the people that I get to meet. Tribe is probably one of the most important things in my life. And so the definition of tribe, some people say, so what is tribe? We know in tribal cultures, it was the geographic community that you were with. That was your tribe. And we even, have in our history, particularly in Canadian history, your tribe even got a name and a number. And that was the tribe that you belong to. Tribe, for the most part, I believe, is people that share a vision and have a way to be able to connect and communicate and work within that vision. And so one of the things that makes this tribe so beautiful is that the vision, I think, even though everyone that comes through the process has a vision of what they want to be, do, and have in their own life, the one thing that we all share is desire to be better and to do better and to be better versions of ourselves. And so capacity is the thing that often we go in search of. We're out there in the world doing skill development, trying to, get that new skill, that new thing, that new opportunity that's going to make your life better. And at the end of the day, I'm not saying capacity isn't important, but what's more important than anything is willingness. And so when you have willingness, then capacity can follow. And so I want to share with you a story of one of the people that I got to meet recently that for me was absolutely the epitome of why I get up every day and do what I do in the world. So her name is Maggie, and she was born in an orphanage in Mexico. So her parents so she was not born as an orphan. Her parents were the two people that ran the orphanage. And so they had started running the orphanage even before they started to have children. And so then their own children were to be, she had 6 brothers and sisters, were to be raised in that orphanage along with the other orphans, and they did not get treated any differently than any of the other orphans. So she talked about what that was like, and that, as many of you know, what we often see at the 5-star resorts in Mexico is not what you would see if you went into some of the villages and the towns and into the mountains in Mexico. Poverty is still very much, I've worked there, got the benefit of working there for a number of years. And so a lot of what happens outside of those fancy resorts, it for us would appear to be very much like a third world country. So poverty was a real thing. There was no food most of the time. At 6 years old, she learned how to hunt with a slingshot so that she could go out and find food. And then she would very carefully decide who out of all the children were the hungriest and who struggled the most. She talked about one little boy that had spina bifida, and that her parents found him in a garbage can. And that, of course, here we have social structures. If we have children born with special needs or disabilities, is that we have ways to be able to help. In Mexico, I believe, and I didn't ever meet his parents, and as she didn't either, probably decided that they were not going to be able to do care for him, so they literally put him in a garbage can. So she, at 6, took a lot of responsibility for him. He couldn't walk, he couldn't manage anything on his own, and her mother was always too busy trying to care for all the other children, so she sort of took him under her wing. So if she was able to kill a squirrel or whatever it was that she was able to get with the slingshot, he was one of the first ones that she would feed and look after. She also suffered tremendously at the hands of some of the children that came through that orphanage as she was growing up, because many of the children that came were children who were survivors of trauma. So she was often beaten, bullied, sexually assaulted. And so one of the ways she decided she would cope is when she went out to hunt, she found a cave one day. And so she dug a hole 15 feet deep and 4 feet wide. And she would go to that hole, and she would sit in that hole, and she would write, and she would imagine, and she would dream. So the song that was playing as I was coming up on the stage was the song Imagine. She would imagine a better life for herself and for all of the children, including her parents. Her father was a tyrant on some level. Her mom completely overwhelmed, couldn't cope most of the time with what she had to manage. And so she, as she described it to me, was in that space of, I never gave up. And I always believed that no matter what was around me in my immediate environment, that I knew there was something better. And so she hadn't been exposed to social media. She hadn't, and she's 35 years old now. So she didn't have access to television, none of those things. But in her heart, she knew that there was something better than what she was experiencing. So at some point in her young life, she was able to go to a school away from the orphanage. So some of the kids were schooled at the orphanage. Some kids were able to go into the town to be schooled. And she discovered basketball. And she discovered that she was really good at basketball. And then as she got later into her middle years in school, the Mexican national team scouted her and wanted her to come and play for them in nationals. So in her heart of hearts, and as she sat in her little hole in the cave, she prayed every day for a breakthrough, and believed that this could be her breakthrough, that she was going to be able to get away from the orphanage. She was going to be able to create something for herself. And 2 weeks before she was supposed to go, one of the bullies at the orphanage beat her up and broke her collarbone. And so then her father, who was angry at her for provoking the boy who beat her with a broken collarbone. And so the nationals were no longer an option. So she sat in her hole, and again, as she described the story to me, she sat in her hole, and instead of being mad about it, instead of even being sad about it, she just said, so God, if that's not it, so if it's not basketball, what is it? Show me. Just show me. I'm willing. Whatever it is, I'll do it. So a couple years later, her father takes her and some of the orphans to the United States. And the purpose of the visit to the United States was to showcase some of the challenges and some of the children and ask for donations for the orphanage. So they were at a park one day. So she went along mostly to care for the younger one. She was a young adult then, and to care for the younger ones. And she was playing basketball, and a scout from the University of Virginia saw her, approached her. She didn't speak any English, so she only spoke Spanish. So she went and introduced this person to her father, and they said, we want to give her a full scholarship, like on the spot. We want her to come and play. Now, she didn't speak English. She had very little what would be considered prerequisite education to go into university. And so they decided the way they could get around that, because you still have to be educated. Yeah, so they wanted her to play sports, but you still need to be educated. So they put her in interior design, because they thought, well, she can't really speak English, but she can't really do anything academic. And so she went through the program. She played basketball. She got a degree in interior design. She now had learned to speak English because she'd lived in the United States for a while. And so when she left university, she couldn't get a job. So she's Mexican. She's a lesbian. She still has very broken English, and nobody in the interior design industry wanted to give her a job. Again, the whole time this is happening, every day she gets up and she uses her tools being a vision board that she created that had images of her helping other people, making a difference, having a home, all of those pieces. She did her affirmations, she meditated, she spent time in quiet contemplation. She held the energy of gratitude every single day, grateful for the fact that she was continuing to be able to have new experiences and new opportunities. When she couldn't get a job and she was no longer on scholarship, she found herself very soon homeless. And so now she's living out of the back seat of a car that she was able to purchase when she was in school. And one of the ways that she fed herself was she scrounged together cash, picking bottles and doing what homeless people do. And she would buy the stuff to make salsa. So one of the things she knew how to make well was salsa. And it's fairly cheap to make fresh salsa. You need some cilantro and some tomatoes and some onions. And so she would make salsa. One day she shared some of it with a friend of hers, and her friend said, "This is amazing. This salsa is absolutely amazing. Like, if you make me some, I'll buy it from you. And if you make my friend some, I'll buy it from you." And then pretty soon she found herself making salsa for friends and making a little bit of money at the same time. One of those friends, so Tanya talked about support, how much we like to ask for support. Sometimes we don't even need to ask for it. People will just naturally decide they want to give it. One of her friends enrolled her salsa at the West Virginia Summer Festival in a contest, and her salsa won. And so the prize money was $800. So she decided that she was going to take that $800 and she was going to invest it into a salsa company. She was going to start a salsa company. And so she made a list, a big long list of all of the companies that the small mom and pop stores that she was going to approach. She did a big spreadsheet of all the people that, and by then she had started to do some interior design work. So she was actually working. So she had an apartment, she was making some money. And so she wanted to make a headway in the business side of things. And so she started calling different companies and said, I have this awesome fresh salsa, not the stuff that we eat, right? That you can leave in your cupboard for about 6 years. And still, it's fresh salsa, right? The stuff, how many of you have been to Mexico and had that stuff, that the fresh, nothing like it. And so she got rejected 90 times. So every place she called, we're like, we're not interested in your salsa. We don't have storage capacity, all of those sorts of pieces. And so her girlfriend at the time said to her, you just need to give up. Like, you just need to stop. Like, how many times do you have to get rejection before you figure out that this isn't it? It's not the thing. You've got a job now, focus on interior design. You've got something good going. Like, stop putting so much effort and energy into salsa. And what she heard when her girlfriend said that to her was her father, who, when she broke her collarbone and was not able to go play for the Mexican national team, said to her, it's okay because you're either going to end up with AIDS or in prison anyway. So there is no possibility. So it's fine. Nothing was ever going to change. So she heard him and she heard that declaration, and she decided to step into that space of, for whatever it's going to take, is that I'm not going to be that person. So I'm not going to be that person, and I'm not going to give up. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip my list. I'm going to stop calling the little stores, and I'm going to call Whole Foods. So Whole Foods in the U.S. is a major grocery store chain. And so she phoned Whole Foods, managed to get a hold of the buyer, the lead buyer, and he goes, oh, I heard about your salsa. He said somebody was at the festival and tried your salsa. So I would love to be able to taste that. And in fact, we have a buying meeting tomorrow with all the buying people. Do you want to come? And she lives in West Virginia, and she's like, sure. Where do I need to be in at what time? He said 9 a.m. and in Maryland. She got in her car, so she loaded up a cooler with some of her salsa. She got in the car, she drove all the way to Maryland. She presented it, and they said, we want this in our stores. So how soon can you get us some? And she's like, well, when do you need it and how much? Now, she was making it for friends at that point, remember? She said she was making about 20 pounds a week for people. So think about that in terms of, and she did it herself, cut the tomatoes, all that sort of stuff. They said, we need it in 2 weeks and we want 20,000 pounds. So she didn't say no. So as she's saying yes and signing the contract, in the back of her mind, she's thinking, holy fuck, that's 60,000 tomatoes that have to be cut in 2 weeks. So talking about the power of support. She drove back to West Virginia. She went to her friends. She also needed the money to buy the supplies and didn't have the money. So she took the contract and she went to people and she said, if you've ever believed in me, then what I need is energy and cash. So I need help. And so she got together an entire group of people, and some gave her 500, some gave her 1,000, somebody gave her 10,000, whatever it was, or however much she needed. She got the order ready just in time to get it to Maryland, and decided that, well, now I've got to get 20,000 pounds of salsa to Maryland. It's fresh salsa. It needs to be refrigerated. There's not enough coolers in the land to manage that. I need a refrigeration truck. So then she put it out to some of her friends, and she said, a friend said, I can rent you one. And so she's perfect. They showed up, and she said it was a true Mexican refrigeration truck. She said the wires were hanging out inside somewhere along the way. She had to duct tape the side mirror on, and that when she got in, she realized it was a standard and that all the numbers had worn off. So it took her 15 minutes just to figure out where was first gear, where was second gear, etc. She alone begins the drive to Maryland with 20,000 pounds of salsa in the back of her truck. And she got to her first hill in that big truck. And she realized that based on the pressure of the hill, she could no longer reach the pedals of the truck. and that this apparently the landscape is there would be a lot of hills on her journey. And she was the first one at the top where the stop sign was, and there's about 6 cars behind her. And so if you've ever driven a standard, you know how that goes, right? So she's like holding onto the steering wheel to try to get herself close enough to the pedal so that she can manage both the gas pedal, the brake, and the clutch, and not quite sure which one is actually first gear. She knows if she fucks it up in its third gear that she's now in trouble, and there could be 20,000 pounds of salsa outside the back of the refrigeration truck that was tied closed at the back. Anyway, she gets out of that situation, but decides that that foot thing is going to be a problem. And so she pulls over, she stops for a second, she has a conversation with her inner self around, you're exactly where you're supposed to be right now, and you have everything you need to make this work. And so she got out of the truck just to kind of get a little bit of air and ground herself, and sitting next on the side of the road was a block, like a cut block. And so she's like, I think that'll work. So she takes it and she duct tapes it to her foot. So now she has the ability to be able to, on the hills, reach the pedal. Not long after, so she got that delivery in, and then Whole Foods started buying, and she started to move into manufacturing and all of those bits that go with being an entrepreneur. Shortly after Whole Foods, Walmart called her and said, we want to carry your salsa. And so she 2 years ago, Campbell's Soup Company bought Maggie's salsa for $240 million US. So now Maggie's sole purpose, because she doesn't need money anymore, Maggie's sole purpose is to get up every day and inspire other people, not with the sad part of her story. In fact, she wrote a book, and she said that she was not going to write about those childhood experiences, the traumatic experiences. What she wanted to write about was what it took for her to build capacity through her willingness and her belief in herself, her belief in community, her belief in tribe, her belief in herself, and her ability to be able to overcome anything in her life, to be able to make a difference in other people's lives. She speaks, she travels. I've connected her with the people in Mexico that I worked for that are doing this work with people there. Her book, every book she sells goes to the orphanage and the children in that orphanage. So she's also now in that process. She adopted every single child in that orphanage, and even though they don't all live with her, she now takes full financial responsibility for every child in that program. So I share Maggie's story with you simply because you've heard many stories on this stage today, and they all have that one thing in common. And that one thing in common is that every single person on this stage, including Maggie, has had the willingness and the desire to do better and be better. And to me, that's what integrity represents, is that it's a space where people can come and do the discovery. You know, we've decided that we're going to start, instead of calling it personal development, we're just going to call it people development. Because, you know, we distinguish personal development from professional development, from, you know, all of the different kinds of things we think we need to develop, and we compartmentalize them. And the reality is, at the end of the day, when you bring your best self to whatever it is that you're doing, even if that's just making the decision to go to the gym because you didn't feel like you wanted to, even if that's just you waking up and deciding that you're going to do something and make a difference for somebody else today, then you've got your aspect of your own people evolution and development in place. So I want to make a couple of announcements. So actually, let me just say why we say to those of you that have not done the work, when you meet somebody and they say, well, what do you do? And what's the program all about? Well, I can't tell you. There's a reason why. It's not because we do anything sort of weird. So I'll just say it out loud because we've all heard it. No Kool-Aid. Juice boxes at the back. That's about it. Is that the reason why we ask our graduates not to talk about the process is because what we want people to do is come and discover what's going on for them at the deepest part of who they are in the form of their belief system. So everything you think and everything that you feel and subsequently everything that you do comes from your coding and comes from your childhood scripting. So we filter everything. So we can all be here right now sharing this experience, and we all are experiencing it differently. And the reason, even though everything's the same, the lights are the same, the stage is the same, the chairs are the same, you're all the same, and we can all experience it differently for one simple reason, is that what we're experiencing has to go through our filter first. And so what we also know is that filter was, you didn't come in with it, you were born with it. You've picked it up along the way. Your parents, your culture, your society. We had somebody talk about, Tamara talked about the impact of religion on her life. So many things impact that thing that we call your belief system. And so the entire purpose of the first level of the program is to put you into an experience and many experiences, in fact, in 30 hours, 30 different activities that will help you dive into the deep end of what you believe about yourself and the world around you based on how you react and respond to the activities. So if somebody that's done the program says, yeah, and then we did this, and then we did that, and then we did this activity, and then we did that activity, and then you came and wanted to meet your belief system, it would be impossible for you to do that. How come? Because you've just gone through somebody else's filter, and so you're going to experience it through their belief system and not yours at all. So that's why we ask our graduates not to talk about the process, talk about what it created for you. And that's what Rhoda has done so beautifully today, is given many of our graduates the opportunity to stand up here and talk about the difference that it's made in their life. And if you look around and ask your neighbor, most of the people in this room have done that same thing. And they could share with you their story of the difference that meeting their belief system has created, and the opportunity to then step into a whole new level of capacity through that willingness to say yes to people development and being better versions of ourselves. So that's what the core of it is. If you really want to know more about it, we have an open house across the street at our office on Wednesday at 6:30. An hour and a half. You get to have some experiences of what we teach and more information about the program. So I don't want to talk any more about that. What I do want to talk about, particularly for those of you that have been such an important part of our tribe and our journey, is we're making some big changes in the next few months. So because we were going to have many of you here, it'll all kind of come out social media, those pieces in the next few days. And lots of you are in this room. So as many of you have heard the saying, change is inevitable, growth is optional. Yes? So some changes coming December 31st. So we've given our notice at the building. So we are going to be moving our physical location. And sorry to say, for most of you, we will be taking the chairs with us. We're not leaving them behind, unless there's a lottery win between now and then. So we have two options in the mix right now. We will be choosing one or the other. One of the locations that we may be going to is Lifestyle Meditation, for those of you that are familiar. It's a beautiful space, absolutely beautiful, just not about 5 blocks from here. And we're working out how that might look in terms of sharing classroom, because they use their classroom a lot. But we're also working on a much larger project and possibility for a place. Anybody know where Revolution Cycle is on Stony Plain Road? So we are looking to perhaps move into that building, which is being converted into a wellness center that will have many, many, many different service providers that are focused on holistic health and wellness. There's already a Bikram yoga and a bunch of stuff in there. The vision for a float center, the vision for that building is to turn it into a basically one-stop shop for people to be able to come and do their work. So it would be an ideal fit for us. It'll be the timing of all of that. And then the other thing is we have cut ties with the Creators Code, just so you know. So as of December 31st, that partnership, so for those of you that don't know, is we have been offering the programs as a licensee of a Calgary-based company. I did the process in Calgary with said same company 22 years ago, believed wholly in not only what I was experiencing, but the change I saw in other people. I have a psychology background. I was running a battered women's program and was in a place in my own life where I knew I needed to make some changes, and they needed to be big ones, and I knew I needed some help. And so I found the courses many, many years ago, which totally changed the trajectory of my life too, and eventually got the opportunity to be able to start a franchise of sorts. And as of December 31st, we get to have the experience of branching out completely on our own. So you might wonder, what does that mean for you? And those of you that maybe haven't come and had an experience of us yet, is that what it means is the names are going to change because the intellectual property is branded and the trade names will change, which is why some of our speakers were wanting to say the gift and the launch, and some of them did. That's part of the Creators Code brand. So we're going to go back to the origins, which goes back to the 70s of what the program was originally called, which is, coincidentally enough, level 1, level 2, and level 3, basic, advanced, and leadership. So we'll be calling them the basic course, the advanced course, and the leadership course. So what it also means, and we're also redesigning level 3. So those of you, how many of you hated the webinars? Okay, they're going. So we are going to shift from a 3-weekend, 8-webinar process to a 4-weekend process. So that will facilitate, and with some webinar stuff in between, stay connected, but definitely not with the length of time and energy that goes into trying to stay present when you want to fall asleep because you've been on the computer for 4 hours or more. So what it also means is we're losing mastery, meaning, and mission in AI. So those are not our programs. Accountability intensive, not artificial insemination, for those of you that don't know what that is. So we have added, so some of you may have that and are going to want to move whatever mountains you need to move so that you can get in on the last 2 courses that we'll be doing before those courses leave us. So we have added Mastery, Meaning, and Mission, as it wasn't supposed to be till 2020, September 13th to the 15th. So if you have that, move mountains to get in that weekend. And Accountability Intensive was already scheduled for October 25th to the 27th. So that'll be your last opportunity. If you hadn't gotten those programs and you want to experience, that's the saddest part for me. You know how sometimes you know it's time to get a divorce and you're really excited about it, but you feel a little bad about the cowboy clock that you got to leave behind? Is that it feels a little like that's the saddest part for me. I'm super excited about the freedom that it's going to give us. And those 2 programs are absolutely probably some of Jay's best work. And so if you have not had the experience and want to, we're going to give you some special pricing so that doesn't have to be a consideration, so that you can absolutely get in before those go. And Jay has definitely gone in a totally different direction. I don't anticipate that he will continue to offer those programs in the near future. If he does, he and I are parting amicably in a really, really good way. If that ever happens, you'll be the first to know if those are resurrected in his process, and it will finish here for us December 31st. So change is inevitable. Growth is optional. We're super excited about all of the changes. We're super excited about the people we have in our life. Tanya has done such a beautiful job of helping us bring our imaging up. You know, we used to have just the white and the blue, and now we got a little burst of orange in everything and all of those pieces. So we're really excited. And the only downside I really see is that we're taking the chairs. That's it. And these ones are worse. I just want to point that out. So you think it's bad, but you can now have a little gratitude for our chairs. Right? You would think. So thank you for your presence today. Thank you, as I said, to those of you that were on stage. As Mama Bear, I am absolutely so proud of each and every one of you to see you stand up here and share your stories and do it with such beauty and such grace and such power, to hear your contracts come out, all of those pieces. Thank you, Rhoda, for having the vision of wanting to showcase some of our people as they so deserve to be recognized and acknowledged for everything that they've done in their lives and in the work and in the world. So thank you.